So you're tripping everybody up today because we're all like, "What's your next failure?"
What's the next failure?
Series?
I'm taking a break for the failures today.
Yeah, we don't have a failure of Christianity. Instead, we have.
It's the title of the show is "Standing Up for Sitting Down," and this is about a girl by the name of India Landry, who is a Texas high school student in the Houston area who has been expelled for sitting down during the daily Pledge of Allegiance in her school. And she says, "I don't think the flag is what it says it's for liberty and justice and all that. It's not obviously what's going on in America today." And she had been inspired by the NFL players such as Colin Kaepernick kneeling during the national anthem and the flag displays to protest police brutality, but her motivations are her own, and she's welcome to those. Texas law requires that students say the pledge, both the U.S. pledge and the Texas pledge, and it allows parents to submit a letter claiming exemption from standing for the pledge, and but it's mandatory otherwise. And she has been given a choice to stand or be expelled, and the truth is a bit murkier, and we'll get to some of those facts in a minute. And she will not be graduating with her class, and she is suing, along with with an attorney, Randall Callanan, and she's suing in federal court over her free speech rights, and the trial is slated for April 2019. And in July, Cypress Fairbanks ISD over in Houston tried unsuccessfully to get the case dismissed. The principal has been a bit wishy-washy on this. Her sitting has been tolerated hundreds of times, according to one quote, and over 200 in another quote. So ultimately, the expulsion came after Trump started to tweet complaints about the NFL's players kneeling, and it became more of a hot button issue. And in fact, the principal said, "This isn't the NFL. You won't do this here." And the principal also said she can't come to my school if she won't stand for the pledge. The principal has refused to accept the mother's permission to skip it. So it seems that both sides have dug their heels in, and the mother tried to write a note, but told the daughter will not be allowed back at all until she stands with or without the note, and that's just a clear dick move as far as I'm concerned. The principal also seems to have trumped up allegations against the student after the fact that were news to the parent. And it seems that the principal was pissed off that some uppity little black girl with good grades was was upsetting the government ceremonies and causing students to learn and think for themselves. Who can't have that in school.
Yeah.
So okay. So Texas law says the Pledge of Allegiance must be recited as well as the allegiance to the Texas state flag. The Texas pledge reads, "Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible." Kind of cheesy in my mind. Yeah. The U.S. pledge, I'm sure most of our readers will know, dates originally to 1892, and it reflects the post-Civil War sentiment of unity. And the original pledge read, "I pledge allegiance to my flag and the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all." The under God stuff was added in 1953 as a Cold War mechanism of corrupting our Constitution as a way of hindering communism. Go figure. And
now Putin is a good guy, right?
Putin's a good guy, I guess, right? Yeah. So, yeah, there was a lot of Cold War stuff that happened. There, we had the motto and the stuff put on our currency, the National Day of Prayer. Mm-hmm. All that was largely due to Billy Graham and Cold War propaganda that we're the God-believing country, all that. Now, there's a very relevant Supreme Court ruling in 1943, which is 75 years ago, my goodness, that students don't have to stand for the pledge. And there's two ironies here. One is It was the Jehovah's Witnesses that actually caused this to be. This is a very early church-state separation case that was brought by the Jehovah's Witnesses. They didn't want to pledge to the
Right. Well, I mean, they're very, very separate from state. I mean, they separate a lot from a lot of things.
And they don't give oaths to anything.
They won't join the military. They're exempt.
And that's fine. That's a valid reason not to do it. The other irony is back then, when you pledged to the flag, you had to do it with a Nazi-style salute. And there's a lot of pictures that have been kind of taken off the internet about that. So that it's actually written in that particular ruling.
Maybe India could say her pledge like that.
That's
the traditional way.
The traditional way.
Yeah.
So God. A faction of Christians in the U.S. want very much to manipulate that captive audience in the public school students and indoctrinate them into Christianity. Prayer in schools and other religious teachings has largely been thwarted, however, but the pledge and the motto seem to be ways of shoving Christianity down the throats of students via recitations and drills and placards and all that good stuff.
And under God.
And under God, right, yeah. And there's this, in my mind, bullshit equivocation that God isn't religious, or it doesn't really mean Christianity, or it's ceremonial deism, and it's no.
It's ceremonial deism when you're arguing it before SCOTUS. But the minute you walk out of those court doors, it's a Christian nation.
That's right.
Right? And you just proved it in court because now God is on the pledge and God is in the money, and it's because we're a Christian nation.
Lie.
And then you walk back in the court and it's the deist tradition, and you walk through it's like a magic door, right? Where it changes like what it is you're
absolutely, and you see that too.
Everyone sees it. Even the Christians see it. That's why they know not to go into court and argue that it's the Christian God. They lie in court, and then they come out and tell the truth about what it is they were really trying to accomplish.
That's right. Yeah,
and that's Christian.
We won one for Jesus.
And I want to just point out that we're talking here specifically about the subset of highly politicized Christianity. That there are plenty of Christians who probably who are very in favor of separation of church and state, who probably would stand behind this young woman.
Yep.
So I don't want to just sort of group them, but those highly political Christians have no morality and no sense of ethic, and they just don't have. There's no bar to how low they'll sink.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I want to point out that because of this God stuff in both pledges, what we have here is we have the government compelling a religious observance, and this is blatantly unconstitutional. If religious freedom means anything, it means freedom from religion, right? Or freedom from your religion or whatever. And, well, what about compelling patriotism? It may be that saying the pledge is a patriotic act, but if you are compelling it, it's no longer patriotic. It's more like conscription. Or
I guess in my mind, right, if you really wanted a young black person to be to feel more loyalty to our society here in the U.S., one way to do that would be to make sure that they're treated with equality when it comes to our legal system and our system of justice and law enforcement. And that maybe if they felt like they actually were considered full citizens and treated like other citizens and given the same sort of regard and respect and, fairness, that the rest of us all understand we're entitled to and seem to expect and generally get from law enforcement and from our justice system and from our prisons and, just extrapolate it out. If we treated them like citizens who are treated like citizens, maybe then they'd be I don't know if the patriotic is the right word, but they would certainly feel more of a sense of affinity for a society that didn't treat them like
investment
crap.
And ownership. And
right. The less fair and the less you treat certain demographics as though they actually have rights. When you start treating people as subhumans and sub-citizens within your society, and then you start demanding that they stand up and express how much they love the society, it's just cruel.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a cruelty, right? I mean, it's one thing to treat people really well and say, hey, we think you should appreciate the fact that we try to treat everybody really well in this society. But when you are, looking at a group of people being treated like garbage, and then you're saying, oh, they're horrible for not, expressing their affinity and loyalty toward the group, It's like, well, maybe we need to express some affinity and loyalty toward those citizens, and then that will be reciprocated on a voluntary basis instead of a compulsory basis.
Sure.
Rawr, rawr.
Yeah. So yeah, this has got my blood going too. So, so I feel strongly that patriotism is not the result of something being coerced.
No, it should never be. If you as a society can't inspire your citizens to want to be loyal and want to participate, you need to stop and look at what you're doing wrong. You need to stop and say, why is this group unhappy?
Right.
What
Are their
can we
complaints
do?
valid, and
Yeah.
what can we do
Why are
about
they
it?
feeling marginalized?
Yeah.
What's going on here? And is there anything we can do to sort of help make them
Absolutely.
feel more integrated instead of making them feel more divided and separated and threatened?
So as a compromise, I advocate a time where students may say the pledge of their own volition, and it's completely optional. Personally, I omit under God when I say the pledge. I do love my country, and I would like to see it do better in a lot of areas, but the God thing has got to go. Let's see. What brought this to the news lately? This actually happened over a year ago, but what brought this to the news is that our Attorney General Ken Paxton stuck his big nose in.
Well, sure.
And Paxton is currently under indictment for securities fraud. Our Attorney General is intervening on the suit on behalf of the school, which basically means that he wants to argue for the state's behalf. He wants to take the limelight
Well,
here.
isn't our current government the former Attorney General?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say we have some very successful attorney generals. Texas, and
Attorneys
I
General,
say that.
right.
Well, I say that with, sort of cringing because generally they are on the side of things like this. But they are very successful at arguing in front of SCOTUS. There are times when other states have very similar issues and they fail, and Texas gets an attorney general in there that argues, and those attorneys get in there and they win. So Texas attorneys, I thanks UT. I don't know.
Yeah.
Although I don't want to blame UT for this, but it's like the Texas attorneys seem to have almost, they're very good at what they do, I guess is what I want to say. They're very good at finding that loophole or finding that one piece of
our
leverage.
current governor, who was Attorney General, sort of said, "Hey, every day I sued Obama, pretty much."
Well, I mean,
when he was in
he kept
that
the
office.
10 Commandments on our courthouse steps, right? Like
Right.
it's in our courthouse kept the 10 Commandments where other states had to pull it down.
Yeah.
Because of some weird technicality of how it was erected here.
Yep.
It was really strange, but they found that one little thing that said this is an exemption.
Yep.
They're scary good.
Right. Well, anyway, so Paxton wants, he may have a duty to uphold Texas laws, but he doesn't necessarily need to grandstand. And his intervention is widely viewed as a political stunt because he's up for re-election, and he's done this sort of thing a number of times. He views this whole thing as a parental rights issue. And
It doesn't surprise me at all in Texas. That's a big Texas thing.
Yeah.
That children are property and homeschool them and whatever.
So that's his angle on it.
Yeah.
No, so he's going to take it into left field somehow. And as a Christian ideologue, he has no understanding of religious freedom unless it involves Christians having their freedom to do what they want.
Hold on, I have a question.
Shove their God down the throats of students and using the government as an instrument.
Doesn't her parent want to exempt her?
Absolutely, yes. So there's
Parental
a
rights,
problem
unless
there.
you want your kid to sit down during the pledge, in which case then you have no rights as a parent, and we're going to force your kid to say the pledge.
Right. So Paxton issued a statement. He says requiring the pledge to be recited at the start of every school day has the laudable result of fostering respect for our flag and a patriotic love of our country.
Where is his demonstration of that metric? Measured how?
Yeah.
I want to know. I would want to see the results of where he got that information.
This is him talking to his base, as far as I'm concerned. Compelling some sort of patriot act is not something that's going to, make people patriots.
But if you're saying that it increases somehow respect for the flag and patriotic love of the country, those are things that are measurable.
Right.
Was there an increase in respect, and was there an increase in patriotism when you did this? And are those things good? And if so, why? And it's like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, this is a bad argument. Another bad argument, he says, this case is about providing for the saying of the Pledge of Allegiance while respecting the parental right to direct the education of the children. The district court should uphold the education code and the right of the parents to determine whether their child will recite the Pledge of Allegiance. And as you said, the parent actually tried to intervene. The principal had dug in her heels at that point. So Paxton is going to use taxpayer money to defend an illegal law, with bad arguments and waste our money. And welcome to Texas.
Yeah, and I mean, you could almost say that the law puts the school in a bad spot, but when you have a school that's supporting it, you can't even give them that much rope. You know what I mean? To say, well, they're between a rock and a hard place here, and
yeah, I think striking the law is pretty clearly the right thing. It gives them a little more time to do some real teaching. Of course, this young black woman and her lawyer will wipe the floor with Paxton, who's clearly gone up against somebody out of his league.
I mean, I hope, but it's not a given.
Yeah, well, I think it is. I think with this, the fact that the principal violated the letter of the law, and the fact that there's a Supreme Court ruling.
Well, I wanted to ask about that, though. Like, are there some sort of requirements for the exemption letter? Is it just that a parent can ask and say, I don't want my kid to stand, or is there something that's required?
It just says, parental note is really all that's required.
So they just need a parental note that exempts the child, and they still wouldn't exempt her?
That's correct.
Okay.
Because at that point, it become a pride matter, is how I read this.
Because I know that the Jehovah's Witnesses, they go at it from a religious freedom standpoint.
Yes, and I think you could strike the law just on that alone, because since that 1943 ruling, we've gotten the God stuff shoved in there after the fact, and I think that if that same court had looked at the God thing, it's like, oh my goodness, we've got a church-state violation as well as
deistic tradition.
Right. Yeah. Well, I don't think they had had those sophisticated arguments by then. And there's an irony here that I love. I love irony. What could be more patriotic than getting a bad law stricken from the books? I think this child is very patriotic. So, in conclusion, I fully expect that India Landry will win. She should be allowed to graduate and go on with her life, potentially making up any work in private school at the expense of this school. I fully expect that the Texas law will be struck down. And in my wildest dreams, I hope that all such state laws, which is most of the states, will have this also struck down too. We'll see. We'd probably have to have a Supreme Court case for that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind seeing the principal fired, because I think that she's really overstepped her and has showed that she's not capable of running the show there.
Well, I mean, it's just basically, foundationally, it's a racist issue, right? I mean, the principal is behaving in a racist way.
It seems that way.
She's looking at this and saying, well, as a white person, I don't understand why you would have a problem with the country and not want to say the pledge. And it's like, well, maybe if you were watching young people being shot and killed every day for doing, carrying a cell phone, and they looked like you,
yeah,
you would have a little bit of a different attitude. So it's like she's upholding this based on her experience, right? And the experience of probably, I don't know what that school
and her
demographic
quote,
is,
I don't think that the flag is what it says it's for liberty and justice.
The young woman
It's
says
obviously not what's going on in America today. Well, that's not what happened to her either.
And so, I mean, we're seeing this like systemic racism play out in the fury that is coming up against these peaceful protests of, black citizens and people who support them. That is basically this sort of, I refuse to consider your perspective. Mm-hmm. I have my perspective and I'm treated well, and so what is your problem?
Yep.
And why do you hate America? And it's just like you're literally invalidating what's happening to a demographic in this country. You're denying the injustice that's occurring right in front of your face. The injustice that you are now perpetrating as somebody who supports this and continues to oppress somebody who's trying to just bring attention to a cause.
That's right.
I mean, it's disgusting.
Yep. And, if you read the comments in some of these articles, that's exactly what you hear. It's like, just disparaging this poor kid who, it doesn't really matter what her reasons are. She has every right to do that. That's one thing, and her reasons are also valid, and they do point to a problem. And why don't we talk about the problem? Maybe that would be a better use of that time instead of some sort of mindless recitation. Finally, I think Ken Paxton will probably get reelected because his base loves this patriotic religious bravado, even though it tramples on the rights of young people. And he can go say, "Hey, I went up against this little kid, and I won," or whatever, and get some money for it for his reelection.
Yeah.
All right, that's it for my little spiel today. Let's take some calls.
Yeah, before we do that, I did have one quick thing I wanted to talk about, which was I went on a vacation this past week.
Oh, no.
And it's horrible. But I went to this, got into this resort that is actually pretty cool resort, but it's kind of a Worcester place, right? So it's like the crystal healing and like all the...
Oh, boy.
And but it has some really cool stuff, and then it's got like, loads and loads of woo. And mainly people go there when they're attending conferences and things that are being put on or talks, and that's how you usually get in.
Is this Sedona?
No, this was over in Big Sur, but
okay.
But the thing was, they had like a catalog of their talks and speakers and things like that. A pretty thick catalog, and so they gave us a copy when we left. We asked for a copy, and I was looking through it, and I found an interesting article that highlighted a young woman who's going to be doing some talks with them or may already be doing them, and they referenced the unaffiliated. And I thought, well, that rings a bell, right? I mean, the nuns.
Could they mean us?
No, I went and I looked. Right, I go and I look and I read the article, and sure enough, they're referencing the nuns, right? What we call the nuns, the people who have no affiliation toward religion, who are like kind of stepping back and stepping out of that. And obviously, there's the whole issue of some people sometimes quote the nuns as people who are unaffiliated with organized religion as being, atheist numbers. But we know that that's not really true.
Right.
That there are people who are spiritual but not religious, and they are really, throwing out the lines there for this particular group and talking about how to engage them. And then they're talking. What was really interesting to me was the way that religious language was now being layered onto non-religious activities. So they were calling things, and this has been going on for a little while. Like spirituality has been sort of reaching further and further into anything you do that's larger than yourself, anything you do that's transcendent. So it's like a wolf pack hunting down an elk and brutally killing it would be a spiritual activity, I guess, for the wolves, because they're working as a group. It's larger than the individual wolf, and it's a transcendent activity. It's happened, before they were even born. This has been established. And so it was interesting to me to see the way that they were reaching out for that unaffiliated community. And I thought, isn't this interesting? So we've got these people that are coming out of religious organizations. And of course, the religious organizations are sort of like, oh, how do we maintain them, right? How do we keep them? We need to get them back.
Yeah, they're in a panic.
And keep them from getting more.
They're losing money.
And then you have, and then I always looked at it as sort of like, and then there's us, right? And we're kind of on the other end of that saying
but we don't have a lot of bait.
All we want,
we're trying to make sense of the world.
We just want you to get control of your own life, right? Yep. We don't want somebody telling you what to do. We just want you to be able to drive your own life and drive your own destiny and to live your life and fulfill your goals and dreams and not be told what to do till you die. And then there's this, I'm seeing more clearly that I always knew that there was a lot of people that were spiritual, not religious, that went into sort of the woo, stuff.
Yeah.
But now it seems there's like an organized drive. Right, there's an awareness in that community.
The Woosters are going after these folks.
Right, so now we have like a three-way pie, right? It's like a pie is divided.
So they're going to come knocking on our doors.
And they are very much like they want to start calling things like writing, groups that are creative writing groups and things like that. They want to start calling them ministries, and they want to. So they're trying to expand. And I'm kind of laughing because I'm thinking, the whole goal was to escape the organized religion, to get away from the organized religion. And now what you're doing is you're like using the same, you're taking the same vocabulary. I don't know if they are or not. I mean, I'm not going to say that they're not because I haven't seen whether or not they're successful in their outreach at this point. They might be. I mean, so I could be misreading it, but
well, one of the interesting things about religion is it's really sort of a battle of ideas, right? And some of these ideas are old, and they get sort of traction that way because they indoctrinate the young and all that. And some of this is, modern spins on this or that. And
right.
We have 30,000 different denominations of Christianity in the United States alone, and they're all going after it's like.
It is interesting, though, to see a group that's trying to sort of hijack the secular world and make every single thing a religious thing in some way, or a spiritual thing in some way.
Yeah, don't need it. Yep.
Yeah, and kind of deny that you can even ever be outside of that. And it's like, wow. I just thought that was an interesting
thing. You just
wanted
a nice weekend in a spa or something.
And I did get a good. I got a good week, and that was an interesting visit, and I enjoyed it. Let me just say, I enjoyed the spa, and I enjoyed the whole place. And that was kind of an interesting sort of, whoa, what is this?
Yeah, it does seem that the Woosters are big on the pampering side of things. Right?
I also had a book that I brought, like the book you bring to read.
Mm-hmm.
And there was like a section that I got to that was talking about James Randi and his support for like a young woman named Emily who at the age of 11 or 12 was like the youngest person to ever publish in JAMA.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
And he helped her a little bit with her experiment design and stuff.
Oh, how wonderful.
And so I was like, wow, this just comes up everywhere. This is just a book on measurements. So that's kind of cool.
That's pretty cool.